If you challenged someone to find the most unlikely candidate for movie stardom that they could, and they showed up with a wickedly handsome 6'4" multilingual martial artist who had accomplished a bunch of cool shit and clearly led an interesting life, you'd say they were cheating. Why then does this rumor, as far as Michael Ovitz making anyone into a star, persist?
Boy, that's a good question.
Was Steven Seagal's film career the result of a crazy bet? It's long been rumored since the 1980s that Steven Seagal got a shot in starring in a film because of Michael Ovitz and a wager between another Hollywood agent. At the time, Michael Ovitz, who launched Creative Artists Agency, was thought to be one of, if not the most powerful person in Hollywood. Rumor has it that the so-called super agent thought so highly of himself that he could find undiscovered talent and make stars out of them. Therefore, he took this wager, with his subject of choice being Steven Seagal.
Wrong bet.
In this video, I'm going to dispel that rumor once and for all, based on several different reasons. I mean, for one, it just doesn't make any logical sense given Steven Seagal's interesting background and natural charisma, which we'll get into a little bit later. Also, who better to hear the origin story between Ovitz and Seagal than Michael Ovitz himself? Now, he's not a guest on the channel, but I got the next best thing, his memoir, Who is Michael Ovitz? Really cool book here. In fact, Forbes called it the best business book of the year, and the London Review of Books said it's more insightful about the American film industry than any biography. So of course, I was most fascinated with the Steven Seagal section, but you guys should check out the whole book. It's quite fascinating read. I'll link it in the description below if you want to pick it up from Amazon.com. But before we get into what Michael said, and also what some of Steven Seagal's critics and haters even said regarding the rumor, which they don't even believe, I want to make a point that there's something much bigger going on here, something much more sinister related to the Ovitz story and so many others. And that's really the main focus of this video. But just for fun, to start off, let's see what someone who found success in the entertainment industry said. Legendary director Sheldon Lettich, when I asked him about this whole Seagal and Ovitz rumor. Yeah. What do you think about that rumor that apparently Michael Ovitz made a bet with somebody and he said, I could make anybody a star? And they're like, well, what about this guy, Steven Seagal? And
I doubt it.
That's just like a rumor, right?
Above the Law was just the right movie for Steven Seagal to be in. And Under Siege was just the right movie for him to be in. And Seagal did have, he had a lot of charisma. Mm-hmm. And he really could do the fight moves also.
Yeah.
So he had that combination.
Rare combination, but that's why Steven Seagal made it, not some silly bet.
No, I doubt that completely. Mike Ovitz would not have made a stupid bet like that and then tried to follow through on it. Basically, he met this guy, Steven Seagal, and took classes from him and was thinking, you know what, this guy's got a lot of charisma. I bet this guy could be a movie star if he was in the right movie.
It looks like the majority of you guys agree with Sheldon Lettich based on a poll I put up on the community page recently asking the question, do you think that Ovitz-Seagal story is just a rumor? Do you think it's actually true? 66% of you guys think it's false. 34% actually think it's true, interestingly enough, which is 1 out of 3. But by the end of this video, I'm sure those numbers will go down. Now, let's go over what one of Seagal's critics say in reference to the bet. For example, an article that I'll link in the description below titled, Does Steven Seagal owe his entire career to a bet? Is from MailMagazine.com, written by Mike Rampton. It reads, it doesn't really hold up. If you were trying to prove a point by making the least charismatic person you could find into a movie star, you'd find someone a lot shittier than 1987 Steven Seagal. If you watch Above the Law, his debut performance, he's definitely got something to him. You can fully see why people would be on board with this guy being the next big thing. If you challenged someone to find the most unlikely candidate for movie stardom that they could, and they showed up with a wickedly handsome 6'4" multilingual martial artist who had accomplished a bunch of cool shit and clearly led an interesting life, you'd say they were cheating. Why then does this rumor, as far as Michael Ovitz making anyone into a star, persist? Well, that article speculates and says, piecing it all together, it seems like the rumor's persistence stems from a combination of a number of things. Ovitz undeniably kickstarted Seagal's career and almost certainly did a fair amount of shit-talking when he was subsequently fired, which we'll talk about more later. He actually mentions it in his book. It's easy enough to see how, whether from Ovitz himself doing the agenting equivalent of a post-breakup, I never loved you anyway, or an inadvertent Hollywood game of telephone, the turning of a talentless nobody into a superstar narrative could stick. My theory is that it actually has nothing to do with Ovitz himself, aside from him obviously being part of the rumor. I don't personally think the story originated from anything that he did specifically, not his own actions, not his own words. Instead, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I think it's something much more sinister. But before we get into that, let's see what Ovitz said in his memoir. Ovitz, by the way, is a martial artist who was already taking karate, and then he took up Aikido, trained with Steven Seagal, and then after that he even trained in jiu-jitsu and probably other martial arts as well, but the guy's an avid martial artist even prior to and then after breaking up with Steven Seagal. The following comes from chapter 12, appropriately titled Wrist Locks. One day, Marty Baum told me, I met the most amazing martial artist. I've never seen anything like what he does. You've got to meet him. His name was Steven Seagal. After moving in his teens from California to Japan, he became the first foreigner to run an Aikido dojo. He had 2,500 disciples, extraordinary for a gaijin or outsider. He had returned to Los Angeles to help Sean Connery with a fight sequence for Never Say Never Again. I asked for a lesson, though I was a little concerned to hear that he'd broken Sean's wrist. My new instructor rolled up our driveway in an ancient Rolls Royce. It took 15 seconds on the map for me to see what Marty was talking about. Seagal was 6'4", strong, slim, and moved like a gazelle. I hired him for 3 workouts a week at $50 an hour. A few weeks in, after we bowed to each other at the end of a session, Steven went to his backpack and pulled out a script he'd written. Would you read this? He asked. I want to be an actor. I said, Steven, I know you want to be an actor or you wouldn't be here teaching me. I'll read it over the weekend. I read the script on a Friday night before our Saturday workout, and I told him, the script is fine, which was overstating it, but let me see what I can do more generally. As Chuck Norris had shown, a guy with the right physical attributes didn't need acting chops or a great script. Ouch, I thought Chuck was actually pretty decent on screen. Anyway, in an action movie, all you need is a character and a mission and a blocked out outline of the action. I loved action movies. They relaxed me. And I believed that a new action megastar would percolate up every decade. Eastwood, Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, and later, Vin Diesel, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. We're about due, guys, by the way. It's been over 10 years since those guys popped up, so we need a new action star, bad. Anyway. Warner Brothers had Eastwood, but he was shifting into less physically demanding roles. I called Terry Semel, Warner's president, and pitched a series of martial arts films around a fresh face. I'm going to send this guy over, I said, and I want you to set up some mats and sandwiches and get your secretaries and assistants to come out at lunchtime for a demonstration. Then I told Steven I wanted him to bring his best apprentices and I wanted blood and shock. He showed up with 4 black belt proteges. He strode to the center of the mat, pricked his thumb with a butcher's knife, showed his audience the blood, and wiped it on his face. Then he shouted something in Japanese and all 4 guys ran at him full tilt with knives. Steven slipped aside and then picked them off one by one, sending each one flying and then flipping the last guy high into the air. There was blood all over the mat. Steven bowed and left without a word. Terry was still jonesing on adrenaline when he called, "What the hell was that?" "That," I said, "is your new action star." The studio budgeted $8 million for a non-union production of Above the Law with a promising young director, Andy Davis. When I saw the rough cut, I thought, this guy is going to be huge. The opening scene was essentially a battle he'd choreographed for Terry Semel. While Above the Law did okay at the box office, the video cassette went through the roof. Steven Seagal made a series of movies that together grossed nearly $300 million, and he was by far Warner Brothers' most profitable star in the early 90s. He got $150,000 for Above the Law, and he was thrilled. We got him $3 million for Hard to Kill and $40 million for the next 3 movies. Including the back end, CAA made at least $10 million off him. Though Steven was growing fleshier by the release, I thought he could go on for years. But he wanted more. One day he told me, "I think I'm as good as an actor as Hoffman, De Niro, all those guys." I said, "Steven, I'm not sure about that, but what makes you special is that those guys can't do Aikido." "You don't understand," he said. "I want to direct my next movie and win an Academy Award, and I want you to help me." Discerning my lack of enthusiasm, Steven left CAA. He went on to direct himself in On Deadly Ground, a total misfire. He had fallen prey to the dangerous, entirely human delusion that if you succeed in one arena, you can do anything. I'm going to extensively cover On Deadly Ground, by the way, in a future video. It's an interesting movie, and we got to give Steven a lot of credit for what he was able to do and the message that he put out. a message that he still puts out to this day, which we'll get into a little bit later in this video. Ironically enough, that message, I think, is actually related to this rumor and so many other stories. So the real question is, for what reason is this rumor even there in the first place?
Boy, that's a good question.
Well, it should be painfully obvious by now. It's part of a whole anti-Steven Seagal campaign that's been going on for far too long now. Steven Seagal even said it himself recently.
As soon as I spoke the truth about certain things that are happening in the world,
Big business is primarily responsible for destroying the water we drink, the air we breathe, and the food we eat. They have no care for the world they destroy, only for the money they make in the process.
a huge campaign on a secret, very top secret level was mounted. 50 people were paid to say all kinds of things about me to destroy me.
So Steven Seagal was talking about things 20 or 30 years ago, going against the establishment. It was downright taboo going after big oil, big corporations, being pro-environmentalism at the time. Ironically, the tide has shifted and his views are in vogue now. But that just goes to show, timing is everything, and unfortunately for Steven Seagal, as far as his career went, he was just ahead of his time with a lot of his views. But going back to environmentalism, I mean, even recently, Seagal's even kind of getting into Russian politics. For example, he proposed a crackdown on businesses that damage the environment. It's the same mission, the same message he's been spouting since the 90s. And he says, without being able to arrest people, when we just find them, they're probably making more money off of the things that are defiling the environment. He said in his welcome speech for A Just Russia, Patriots for the Truth. Like I mentioned, this is the same position he had in the 90s and part of the whole message at the end of On Deadly Ground.
The law says no company can be fined over $25,000 a day. If a company's making $10 million a day by dumping lethal toxic waste into the ocean, it's only good business to continue doing this.
Now, of course, with what's going on in Russia right now, the guy just can't catch a break. We need to remember, though, that first and foremost, he's a diplomat. And although caught up in this situation and seemingly aligned with Putin, who the world thinks is the enemy, Seagal wants nothing more than peace between Russia and the Ukrainian people. In fact, he even stated that himself on Fox News Digital. Seagal says that he sees Russia and Ukraine as one family. He said, most of us have friends and family in Russia and Ukraine. I look at both as one family, and I really believe it is an outside entity spending huge sums of money on propaganda to provoke the two countries to be at odds with each other. My prayers are that both countries will come to a positive, peaceful resolution where we can live and thrive together in peace. You know, I'd wager that Steven Seagal is actually spouting a lot more truth than you're going to get in the mainstream media, those news outlets, that's for sure. But of course, Steven continues to be vilified and lied about, like, for example, a fake CNN article, which that in itself is kind of ironic, even fooled Joe Rogan. It stated, intelligence agencies around the world have spotted American actor Steven Seagal among Russian special forces positioned around the outskirts of Gostomel airfield near Kiev. Of course, they used a picture from him in one of his movies. It's ridiculous. Like, why would they even put that out, and why would anybody believe it? Like, come on, Joe Rogan. But the news cycle with some other stories too, even with him attending like a birthday party, I believe with like Russian officials, for example, they even twisted and spun that story to make him sound bad. You know, it's just not fair. The news cycle wants nothing more than to vilify this man, which is why other stories keep popping back up in the news cycle. Most recently from John Leguizamo and Freddie Prinze Jr. of all people regurgitating the whole Judo Jean LaBelle choking story. Of course, they must be the experts because they weren't there. Like, maybe they should watch the videos I had on my channel with stunt coordinator Conrad Palmisano and then stuntman Stephen Lambert, two guys who were actually there. They said it never happened. At least nowhere near the version of the story that paints Steven as very negative and wants to embarrass himself. Like, other people want that story to persist for whatever reason, but I'm telling you, you guys got to listen to the real witnesses. And I know that a lot of you guys on the channel have done that, but more people need to hear the truth.
This is the sad thing about America. You can destroy someone's life, their legacy, their reputation just by making up lies.
So what can these people do to basically diminish Steven Seagal's accomplishments? Well, he's a great martial artist, but they'll try to make it sound like he wasn't by constantly recycling that Judo Jean LaBelle story. Or Charlize Theron will go out and talk shit about Steven Seagal's martial arts. Look, she's an actress. She trained in stunt fighting. Steven Seagal moved to Japan. He ran a dojo. Like, he's the real deal. So anyway, the whole Charlize Theron thing really kind of pissed me off and left a bad taste in my mouth. I made a separate video about that. You guys should check that out if you haven't seen it yet. So what else can they try to do? Well, they could try to diminish his film and movie accomplishments. I mean, think about it. There's no denying, like, how big of a star he was. I mean, he was, like, top dog at Warner Brothers. Under Siege, I believe, grossed over $100 million worldwide. Numbers don't lie. You can't take that away from him. I mean, you could try. It's almost like knocking down, you know, pulling away statues. Facts are facts, though. History was made and should be remembered and appreciated and respected, not torn down. But rumors like this, like the whole Michael Ovitz thing, you know, they want you to think, oh, it's just some crazy bet. This guy should have never been in movies, never got his chance. Well, even if someone believed that, the fact of the matter is he had a string of hits. So even if that ridiculous rumor were true, he had a string of hits. He's a bona fide star regardless of how it happened. But again, people just want you to think of, you know, the haters out there, obviously not everybody, but the haters out there just want you to think of, oh, well, you know, he shouldn't have ever been in movies to begin with.
When a real warrior dies, he has to be remembered by what he did in life.
For all the Steven Seagal critics and haters out there, I got a message for you, and it's bad news because Steven Seagal is going to be remembered as a great martial artist, as one of the best and biggest action movie stars of all time in the greatest era where they made those movies. And a lot more people are going to remember that, realize that again. And for like a young generation of fans are going to discover Steven Seagal for the first time, and I'll tell you why. They don't make movies, especially in that genre, like they used to. And what's old is new again. So this stuff's coming back. People are rediscovering or discovering for the first time, the younger generation that is. And there's going to be a much deeper appreciation for Steven Seagal. Like you guys watching my videos, we're at the forefront of it. The mainstream masses just don't realize, but there's a shift that's going to occur. And it needs to occur. But, you know, Steven Seagal himself will even say a lot of his movies, you know, they weren't like technically martial arts films. There's actually a lot more going on. And that's why his movies are true classics that we still talk about and will continue to talk about. But basically, the man, his legacy, though somewhat tarnished in the sense that there's so much negativity directed his way, even on YouTube, so many like negative videos that get so many views, which is why you guys got to help push this out and share this and spread the positivity, right? I know there's a lot of stories with Seagal. He even talks about them. There's even accusations. Like, look, guys, accusations aren't true. I could accuse anybody of anything. Somebody could accuse me of anything. Doesn't mean it's true. Fact of the matter is, has he ever been arrested for any of that stuff? No. Like, has he been tried for it? Like, some stuff might have been settled out of court, but at the end of the day, a lot of people are just looking for a cash grab. So I'm not saying he's a saint. Like, nobody is.
I did whatever I had to do to get the bad guys.
But I'm telling you, there is a reason why there's all this negativity pointed in this direction. But a lot of people could see right past it. People like me, I know a lot of you guys, you know, and a lot of his contemporaries, like martial arts grandmasters and all that, they see right through that. They know it's all BS. They know Steven Seagal's amazing, especially when it comes to the martial arts, that he's a cool guy, etc. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. I think just in general, people like to hate on other people. And I think they need to direct that hatred towards somebody else. Like, Steven Seagal's had enough by now, okay? Like, he really has. And like, I'm not saying just like pick a random guy and give him hate. Like, honestly, I'm more about like respect and love, right? But if people need to direct their hatreds towards somebody, at least redirect it towards somebody else by now. I mean, come on.